comment that he didn't have the career that he deserved, but he has a biography that he deserves. And I think that's well said. I'd like to think that if Artie were still alive today, he would look at this as, first off, he'd be proud of it, and most of all, I guess, smile, because that was Artie's signature of approval, was a smile.
Definitely. Well, I'd like to thank our guest, Gaylon White, for joining us today. He's the author of Singles and Smiles, How Artie Wilson Broke Baseball's Color Barrier. So what inspired you to write the book, Gaylon?
Back in the 1970s, I was interviewing different players on guys who played in the Pacific Coast League, which was known as sort of the third major league prior to baseball's expansion westward in 1958. And Artie Wilson's name came up as one of the great minor league players who had just a cup of coffee in the majors. As I dug deeper, I found out more about his Negro League career. And what I realized was that he was the greatest shortstop nobody heard of. Monty Irvin described Artie. Monty played in the Negro Leagues and also went on to play with the New York Giants and become a Hall of Famer. He described Artie as a superstar before the term was invented. Artie was a 5-time Negro League All-Star. He played 5 years in the Negro Leagues. In 1945, when Branch Rickey made the decision to sign a black player and was looking at various candidates, Artie's name was recommended to Branch by several Negro League owners. Artie was the premier shortstop in the Negro Leagues at that time. Jackie also played shortstop. Artie would tell you, and he did tell me in 1975 when I interviewed him for the first time, that Jackie Robinson was the right choice. He was the man to break the color barrier, but he was a better shortstop. And most people who saw them both play in 1945 would agree with Artie.
Yeah, with his streak of All-Star Game appearances, the only person who did snap that was Jackie Robinson. So was he more disappointed about that streak snapping than not breaking the color barrier?
I don't know the full story behind why he didn't play in the 1945 All-Star Game. He was named as the starter. The manager of the All-Star team was his manager with the Black Barons, and the Black Barons were going through some problems then, and disciplinary problems, and while Artie typically was not in anybody's doghouse, he must have been in this case because his manager did not play him in the game. But otherwise, Artie was scheduled to start, and Jackie would have replaced him during the game. But that's the only time he didn't appear in a Negro League All-Star Game. In the four that he played in, he starred in each game. He was one of the standouts each time that he played in the Negro League All-Star Game, which was a big event, always held at Comiskey Park in Chicago.
So in some ways, he was similar to the Buffalo Bills or the Minnesota Vikings with getting to 3 World Series or Negro League World Series. Which one of those was probably the most important to him?
Well, Artie took everything in stride. He never. The only regret he had about his entire career had nothing to do with himself. His one regret was that Josh Gibson, known by many as the greatest player ever to step to the plate, that he didn't get a chance in the majors. So Artie's regret had little to do with himself. He knew of his own ability. He was confident that he could have played in the majors if given a chance. When he finally got a chance in 1951, he was 30 years old, and he was going up against Alvin Dark at shortstop and Eddie Stanky at second. They were both entrenched. Now, in Artie's mind, he was a better hitter than either one, and he was a better fielder. But both had experience playing the majors, and Artie knew that, and they were making good salaries, and Artie knew that to move them off second or short was not going to happen. So Artie was basically a utility man. Leo DeRozier loved Artie. He liked his hustle, liked his speed, liked his ability to hit him where they ain't. But he only started Artie in one game. And that led Artie to go to Leo in May when the Giants were struggling, and the Giants needed a center fielder. They had a center fielder in Minneapolis, their AAA affiliate, The center fielder's name was Willie Mays. And Willie was batting .477 at Minneapolis. So Artie had played with Willie in the Negro Leagues. In fact, in 1948, Artie hit .402 for the Birmingham Black Barons, making him the last man to hit .400 at the major league level. But Artie and Willie were teammates in 1948, and Artie knew full well what Willie could do. And so he went to Leo, and he'd seen Willie play more than Leo had. And he said, send me down, bring Willie up. I make more money in the minors than I do here, and I want to play every day. And that's what happened. So Artie is the answer, you might say, to the trivia question of who went down to the minors when Willie Mays came up.
With his experience with Willie Mays, doesn't it even go back further than just Willie? Doesn't it go back to his father?
Yes. His father's name was also Willie Mays Sr. His nickname was Cat, and that was because of his quickness. He was an outfielder as well. Many of the way Willie Mays played the outfield was very similar to the way his father played the outfield in the Birmingham Industrial League, which, by the way, was an outstanding league. It was sort of a feeder system into the Negro Leagues. So Cat Mays and Willie and Artie were good friends. In fact, in 1949, Artie broke into organized baseball in 1949. He led the Pacific Coast League in hitting with a .348 batting average. He also led the league in stolen bases. Towards the end of the '49 season, Cat Mays wanted Artie to bring Willie out to Oakland and then play with the Oaks. Now, to do that, Willie was still in high school. To do that, Artie would have needed to become Willie's legal guardian. Cat Mays agreed to that. The Oaks did not bring him out near the end of the '49 season, so in spring training in 1950, again, Cat Mays wanted Artie to take Willie out to the West Coast. Well, Artie went to the Oakland management, and Charlie Dressen was the manager, Brick Laws was the owner, and made this proposal to them. They just sat on it too long because about in May of 1950, the New York Giants signed Willie, and the Oakland Oaks missed out on it. I asked Willie what would have happened if he had taken Willie to the Coast League and played with the Oakland Oaks. Where would he have wound up? Artie's answer was the New York Yankees. Why? Because the Oakland Oaks, while they weren't directly affiliated with the Yankees, they were sort of a pipeline. Billy Martin was a teammate and a roommate of Artie in 1949, and Jackie Jensen also was a teammate with the Oaks and Artie in 1949, and both wound up going to the Yankees. So there was this pipeline between Oakland and New York that probably would have taken Willie up to the Yankees. And just imagine Willie Mays and Mickey Mantle in the same outfield.
That is quite scary, but quite amazing to think of that. Yeah, because they were in different leagues, right? The American and the National, so they didn't even get to play together in the All-Star game.
No, they were in the same town, New York City, for a while until the Giants moved out to San Francisco, but they were in different leagues. And two of the greatest center fielders of all time, my guess is that Mickey probably would have moved to left and Willie would have been in center. It could have also, though, have extended Mickey Mantle's career because he had injuries and so forth, that perhaps having a Willie Mays in the same outfield would have allowed him to pace himself a little better. All those are what-ifs. One of the things about Artie Wilson that makes what he did even more amazing is, at the age of 19, the top part of his right thumb was cut off in a machine shop accident. So on his throwing hand, he was missing his thumb. And several players told me they can only imagine what Artie could have done if he had had the whole thumb. But just think about that. He had playing with a stub of a thumb on his throwing hand and still managed to hit .376 during his Negro League career, which is third highest in history, and hit during his 9 years in the Pacific Coast League, he hit .314 over his career. So he didn't let it affect his hitting, and of course he was an outstanding fielder. He had some nicknames that I think speak to his fielding ability. In the Negro Leagues, he was known as the Octopus. That's because he fielded shortstop like he had 8 arms. In Puerto Rico, he was known as the ground sweeper. Again, anything that he came close to, he was able to pick up and throw a guy out. He had another nickname in the Coast League called Houdini, and that was connected with his ability to hit balls in the left field. He was a left-handed hitter, but he got most of his hits to left field, and he was able to just to kind of parachute them in among the players, or hit line drives oftentimes too. They would just go among all the defenders bunched up on the left side.
When it comes to nicknames, didn't he give out an important nickname?
Let's see. You got me there for a second. Tell me what you're thinking of, and I'll...
The Castro.
Castro. I don't know that he gave... I didn't come across anything with Castro. He wound up in Sacramento. They wound up calling him Mr. Hey Hey, as compared with Mr. Say Hey, which was Willie Mays' nickname. But the Castro nickname, I'm not sure...
no,
I don't believe I have
played with Castro.
No, he didn't play. He didn't play in Cuba, and he didn't play...
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought they played together in Puerto Rico.
No, well, he played with Orlando Cepeda's father, Pedro Cepeda.
Oh, okay, that's what I was thinking of.
Yeah, and his nickname there, the name he was best known for was ground sweeper. In the close league with Oakland, they started to call him Artful Artie, again because he just had an artistic way about him. His longtime teammate, both in the Birmingham Industrial League and then in the Negro Leagues, Piper Davis. And Piper also wound up playing in the close league and having quite an excellent career. Piper often said that he called Artie the greatest singles hitter of all time. He was a great bunter. Artie could do all the little things that most players couldn't do. But one of the things that Piper said about Artie was that Willie Mays played for the fans, so did Artie. They had the same kind of flair. They elicited the same kind of electricity in the crowd. Artie, what's interesting is because Brandon Belt of the San Francisco Giants is in the news right now because of a 21 pitch at bat he had. Willie Mays recalls in the Negro Leagues where Artie fouled off 15 pitches in a single at bat. In the close league, he once fouled off 13 pitches before the pitcher threw the ball behind him just to get him away from the plate. Artie typically would foul off in one game 20 to 25 pitches. He would foul pitches off, one, to wear down the pitcher, because he was a leadoff man, and two, to get the pitch that he wanted. He preferred hitting pitches out of the strike zone that he could send to left field. He often would let a pitch right down the middle go by. So he was very unorthodox in his hitting style, but he was very exciting to watch.
So just like a lot of other great hitters, Pete Rose, Ted Williams, Tony Gwynn, like you said, they were wanting to foul off the pitches to get the pitcher deeper into the count or to wear them down.
Absolutely. In fact, most pitchers considered him a pest. He not only was a pest with a bat, but he was a pest with his legs. I was just talking the other day with Dave Hillman, who is the oldest living New York Met. He's 90 years old and lives nearby. And I brought up Artie's name, and he said that he was so fast that when Artie got on first base, we went ahead and threw to third just to head him off. So he was very, very fast. There's a quote I have from Leo DeRozier, and it goes like this: when Wilson comes to bat, the third baseman is even with the bag. The shortstop comes in 3 steps. The infielders just don't know where they are. And when he gets on first base, they all move up afraid he's going to steal. So he basically took a defense out of its normal rhythm. And, of course, they overshifted on him a lot. At that time, shifts were relatively rare. The only shift that existed was the Ted Williams shift. And in that case, Ted, a left-handed hitter, they all shifted over to the right side. But Artie, also a left-handed hitter, they shifted over to the left, sometimes leaving right field wide open. In fact, this happened in a game between the Dodgers and the Giants, and Artie came to plate, and Charlie Dressen, then the manager of the Dodgers, moved Carl Furillo, who was the right fielder, in to play second base. Everybody else shifted over to the left side. Artie wound up grounding back to the pitcher, but most of the time, the shifts backfired, and it didn't work. Artie still managed to hit well over 300 despite these shifts against him.
You'd mentioned the pipeline with Oakland. Casey Stengel was part of that pipeline, right?
Absolutely. Casey Stengel managed the Oakland Oaks to the Pacific Coast League pennant in 1948. The team was known as the Nine Old Men. They could have added Casey to that. So he, yes, went up to the Yankees. Billy Martin, as I mentioned earlier, was Artie's roommate. He volunteered to be Artie's roommate because the Oaks had no other black players. There had been reports in later years that Billy Martin was prejudiced. I asked Artie about that, and he said Billy Martin didn't have a prejudiced bone in his body. So that's straight from Artie Wilson, who roomed with Billy Martin in 1949. A couple times, Billy, they wouldn't serve Artie in a restaurant, and Billy wanted to fight over it. And Artie would just calm him down and say, Billy, let's go on. Let's not get any row right now. And they would leave. But they were good friends. He was also good friends with Jackie Jensen. In fact, their daughter, Zoanne, was named after Jackie Jensen's wife. Artie was a great in-between guy between the races. He got along with both blacks and whites. And again, it comes down to his personality. He had this winning smile, and he used that winning smile to win over his detractors. His biggest detractor was one in Sacramento. When he entered the Coast League in 1949, and the Oaks played in Sacramento, this man would call him the N-word, would yell at Sacramento pitchers to throw at Artie. They did not, but he still yelled at them to do so. Artie ended his career in Sacramento in 1957. Guess who his biggest booster was? The same fan who was calling the N-word in 1949. In fact, this fan organized an Artie Wilson Appreciation Night to celebrate Artie's career, because that's where he ended his career in Sacramento.
Did Happy Chandler make the right decision by sending him to the Yankees?
Absolutely not, and I'm quoting right there Bill Veeck. The story there is actually, it was called the Battle for Art Wilson. It happened in 1949. The New York Yankees claimed they had a verbal agreement with the Birmingham Black Barons owner, Tom Hayes. Artie never agreed to play for the Yankees. In fact, the Yankees offered him $500. Why would he accept that offer when he was making $750 with the Black Barons? So he didn't accept it. Bill Veeck flew to Puerto Rico and signed Artie to a contract along with Luke Easter. Artie went to spring training with the Cleveland Indians in 1949, batted .417, the third best batting average on the Cleveland Indians. The Yankees, of course, contested Artie's signing by Bill Veeck, primarily because they didn't want the Indians to have him. The Yankees already had Phil Rizzuto. Now the Indians had Lou Boudreau, who had been the most valuable player in 1948. But the Indians had won the World Series in 48. The Yankees weren't happy about that. They wanted to get back on top. And George Weiss, the president of the Yankees, did not like Bill Veeck and wanted to keep Artie Wilson from playing with the Indians. So they contested the signing by the Indians. Happy Chandler, the commissioner, ruled in favor of the Yankees. And Bill Veeck told me later on that he never did understand the decision, that it absolutely hurt Artie's career. Artie could have been in the majors in 1949 with the Indians. Instead, he didn't make it to the majors until 1951 with the New York Giants. And when he got to the majors with the Giants in 1951, he only started one game. He batted a total of 24 times, so he walked twice, so he had 22 official bats. He went 4 for 22. Think about this for a moment. Willie Mays, when he came up to the majors in 1951, had only one hit in his first 21 at-bats. What if Willie had been given, you might say, the short leash that Artie had? We wouldn't have heard of Willie Mays, likely. Although, of course, Willie was 20 and Artie was 30. But you had to be, for most black players at that time, they had to be an instant success. They got one cup of coffee, no refills. And that was the case with Artie. Why didn't some other team pick him up? That's a good question. They have no answer for it. In Leo DeRozier's own words, he was better. There are a lot of clubs in this league that don't even have one guy like him to play shortstop, Leo said. So why the Cubs, the Pirates, some of the other teams that were not first division teams and needed shortstops, why didn't pick up Artie Wilson? I don't know the answer to that question.
Yeah, actually, that was going to be my next thing because it kind of baffles you because you end up going back and winning 3 more batting titles. So you're thinking, well, heck, he's shown he could hit on the other level. You would think they would try to bring him back up, but like you were saying, part of it was the age.
Well, the Chicago Cubs, in 1944, Abe Saperstein, who was known as the Great White Father of Negro League Baseball, and Abe Saperstein was the founder and owner of the Harlem Globetrotters. And so he was very close with the black players. They loved Abe Saperstein. He took care of them, and he also promoted them as he did his basketball team. Abe Saperstein thought, and he probably was correct, that Artie Wilson at shortstop and Piper Davis at second base was the greatest Negro League double-play combination. And they were the biggest plum for a major league team. And in 1944, Abe Saperstein tried to get the Cubs to sign them as a double-play combination. The Cubs, of course, did not. In fact, the Cubs did not have a black player until Ernie Banks became the first one in 1953. Piper Davis got a look, you might say, by the Boston Red Sox. They sent him to their Class A affiliate in Scranton, Pennsylvania in 1949. Piper was hitting well over 300 when the Red Sox released him. It's interesting that the Red Sox were the last team in the majors to sign a black player, Pumpsie Green, in 1959. But Piper Davis should have gone up with the Red Sox as early as 1949.
Who would you compare Artie to today? A lot of people would say Ichiro is the first one that comes to mind, but who else would you feel would?
Ichiro, from a hitting standpoint, they were both left-handed hitters, and Artie was running out of the batter's box when he made contact. He was very quick to first base, and he was moving when he hit the ball, which is much as Ichiro does. His bat control, if you go back a little further, Rod Carew was a great bunter and could really control the bat, and a perennial 300 hitter. He was a lot like Rod Carew. At shortstop, defensively, Ozzie Smith, and that's going back a few years, but he played the position like Ozzie Smith. In terms of enthusiasm for the game, when I watch Altuve of the Houston Ball Club, he plays the game with the same sort of enthusiasm and smile that Artie Wilson played the game with. Artie Wilson, Ernie Banks coined the phrase, let's play 2. Artie could have said, let's play 5. What do I mean by that? Artie once played in a doubleheader in Birmingham. The next day, he played in a doubleheader during the day in Memphis. That night, they traveled to Jackson, Mississippi, 200 miles away from Memphis, and played another game. Within a period of 36 hours, Artie Wilson played in 5 games.
Jeez.
He would. One of the things he was very proud of was he never got kicked out of a ball game. He never argued with an umpire. In fact, his logic was, I can't do a team any good sitting on the bench. I got to be in the game, and the only way you stay in the game, or one way you stay in the game, is make sure you don't get kicked out by arguing a call with an umpire who you're not going to change his mind anyway. So that was kind of Artie's approach. He loved to play the game. I was with him during the 1994 strike. He was almost in tears because they weren't playing baseball in September. And in fact, he said, and at that time, that would have been 1994, so he was almost 74 years old. He said, if I could, I would go out and play now.
Who would you like to thank for helping you with the book?
Well, all the ball players who talked to me. I always remember Chuck Stevens. He is the oldest living Major League ball player right now. He's 99 years old, turns 100 this summer. I remember this quote from Chuck Stevens. We spoke back in the 1970s, the first time. We've spoken several times since then. But Chuck's made this comment. Artie carried the banner well when it was important. The only guys who get credit for integrating baseball are the guys with big league careers. But the Artie Wilsons were as important as the Jackie Robinsons. They handled themselves in a difficult time with great dignity. One of the things I wanted to do with Singles and Smiles was to shed some light on the career of Artie Wilson, as well as some of the other black players who were pioneers, who broke the color barriers in the cities where they played. One of them was Reverend Bill Greason, who broke the color barrier in Oklahoma City, and then became the first black pitcher with the St. Louis Cardinals. Reverend Greason is still living. He's 93 years old and still pastors the church in Birmingham, Alabama. Dave Hoskins was the first pitcher, the first player in the Texas League. He became known as the savior of the Texas League. Why? He won 20-something games that season. His presence increased attendance in the league by 100,000 people. I love the story about Dave Hoskins. He got 3 death threats before a game in Shreveport. One threatened to kill him if he took to shoot him if he took the mound. One threatened to shoot him if he stepped out of the dugout. One threatened to shoot him if he took home plate. He figured these letters were from the same guy. He went ahead and played, and he beat Shreveport.
Wow, it is. I mean, it is amazing the stuff that they had to go through to integrate the game, to make opportunities for the players that are of today.
Well, James, it's a history that we cannot forget, and that is one of the reasons, again, for the book, was to make sure that we as fans and also today's players remember how they got the opportunity to do what they're doing now. Artie raised the question, what if Jackie had failed? And when he first asked that question, it was 1975. Frank Robinson was in his first year as manager of the Baltimore Orioles, and Frank was the first black manager. So between Jackie Robinson in 1947 and Frank Robinson in 1975, what is that, 18 years? My math is not real good this morning, but you get the idea how much time passed before we had a black manager after having our first black player. Artie thinks that if Jackie had failed, it would have been a number of more years before blacks had a chance to play in the majors. But just think what black players did once they got to the majors. I mean, in just a few years, you had Willie Mays in 1951. You had Henry Aaron. You had Roberto Clemente. You had these great black ball players entering baseball in the 1950s. And they would not have had that opportunity if it hadn't been for Jackie Robinson, Artie Wilson, Reverend Bill Greason, Dave Hoskins, many of the players who I write about in the book who most other people have forgotten about.
If fans are wanting to learn more about or follow you on social media, where should they look?
My Twitter account is Gaylon White, at Gaylon White. We're establishing a website here. It's not up yet, and we'll still soon have that. That will be Gaylon White Baseball, www.GaylonWhiteBaseball. I've done 2 other books prior to this, the Bilko Athletic Club, and then I co-wrote a book with Ransom Jackson, 2-time All-Star in the National League with the Chicago Cubs. And that was called Ransom Jackson, Accidental Big Leaguer. All 3 books will be covered on that website. So they'll find out more there, and I have no problem fans writing me at GaylonWhite@gmail.com, and I'll be glad to get back to them with any answers to questions they have and continue the dialogue. I want more people to know about Artie Wilson. James, in today's world, where it's so easy or people are so willing to become a victim, Artie Wilson could have easily have thought of himself as a victim. He did not. He felt he was privileged for playing baseball when he did, and he would not want to change anything about his career. He was an amazing man, and I'm hoping that through this book, we put smiles on the faces of a lot of people who find out about Artie Wilson, who broke the color barrier with Singles and Smiles.
Well, we greatly appreciate you coming on the show today. Gaylon White, author of Singles and Smiles, How Artie Wilson Broke the Color Barrier, and definitely look forward to what books you have in the future.
Thanks, James. I appreciate this opportunity to talk about Artie.
Sounds great.